My name is Nick Park from Evangelical Alliance Ireland, and welcome to our weekly video entitled It's Friday, but Sunday's Coming. Please don't turn the video off because you don't like the shirt I'm wearing. There is a reason behind it, and let me explain. Ever since I was a young boy, I have been an Arsenal supporter. I followed them, religiously. Really, following them, looking for their results all the time, watching matches whenever they were on, travelling to watch them in live. And then during the lockdown, suddenly all the sport stopped, and I discovered something amazing. I didn't miss it. In fact, with all the people that were dying and everything that was going on, sport seemed very trivial and very far away. And then gradually, as you know, sport started up again, and yet I couldn't regain or rekindle my old enthusiasm for it. In fact, the first few matches that Arsenal played, I didn't even watch them. Now, I did watch most of the FA Cup final, which they won. But to be honest, I wasn't overexcited about it. And to be honest, I don't know if I ever will be again. Because I've become increasingly aware that the way that we often view sport is an example of getting our priorities all wrong and taking something that in the end is just a game and turning it into an all-consuming passion. Imagine somebody getting out of control because they were losing a game. You know, as kids, we would have laughed at somebody for that somebody that couldn't control their temper just because they lost a game. In fact, in 2010, a 25-year-old man in New York killed a 9-year-old boy because the boy was beating him at a Tony Hawk skateboarding video game. Now, obviously, that man did have severe mental illness, but really, we would say surely no rational person is ever going to get that out of control because of a game. Well, we need to remember that phrase, it's just a game. Whether it's doing a jigsaw, whether it's playing Candy Crush, whether it's a game of Monopoly, or whether it is professional sport, when all is said and done, it's just a game. You might love the game. You might devote time to the game. You might train to get better at the game. You might even be good enough to make money from playing a game. You might even achieve fame. A few people do achieve great fame for being able to play a game well. But when all is said and done, it's just a game. In my frequent trips to the United States, I have often felt uncomfortable when I see college athletics, and I see, for example, the millions that get paid to coaches for what are university sports teams, and that these institutions that are there for academic learning pay their sports coaches many, many, many times more salary than their top academics. I've always felt there was something wrong in the priorities that would allow that to happen. And I assumed that was just something that was transatlantic, that on this side of the Atlantic we would have a better sense of perspective and more sense, or maybe not. Bill Shankly, the late great Liverpool manager, once said, "Football is not a matter of life and death. It's much more important than that." Well, Bill Shankly was wrong. Football or any other game is not more important than life or death. And when we treat it as if it is, we cheapen human life. And that's why I was so shocked just 3 or 4 days ago to read a BBC report. And get this, a BBC survey of elite British sportswomen has found that just over 4% of respondents have had abortions because they felt a baby would affect their sporting careers. And that's more than twice the average rate of abortions in England and Wales over the last decade, which stands at about 1.7 per 100 women. So we're talking here about athletes who basically make their living from playing a game. And 4% of them said that they had had abortions. They had killed an unborn baby because it would interfere with them playing a game. I was deeply shocked and horrified to read that. I went on to read, it says, 3 years ago, American former Olympic 400-meter champion Sanya Richards-Ross revealed that she had had a termination a day before leaving for the 2008 Beijing Games, where she won a gold and bronze medal. She later said that every female athlete she knew had had an abortion, but the issue was not talked about, and that she felt she had helped other women by speaking publicly about it. I am pro-life. I'm opposed to abortion for many, many reasons. But I have to say that to kill an unborn child because the child interfered with playing a game represents a level of social decadence, of misplaced priorities, and of outright barbarism and depravity that will astound future generations. I honestly believe this, that in the same way that we look back to previous times in history and look at some of the things that they did, some of the things that were utterly cruel, utterly barbaric, and we say, how on earth could anybody ever connive in that? I believe that future generations will look at us and say, how could that generation have become so twisted in their priorities that they would take an unborn baby's life rather than allow it to interfere with participating in or winning a game? During the abortion referendum of 2018 here in Ireland, there was a lot of misinformation that was spread around, sometimes by both sides. For example, there was the common mantra that as a result of this legislation, abortion would be safe, legal, and rare. And last year I was in a meeting at Dublin Castle with Leo Varadkar, who was then the Taoiseach, Prime Minister of our country, with a number of other church leaders, and my friend Trevor Morrow, a former Presbyterian moderator and longtime minister of the Presbyterian Church in Lucan. Trevor asked Leo Varadkar, based on the statistics that we're now beginning to see for the number of abortions taking place in Ireland since that referendum, would you call that rare? I thought it was a very penetrating question. And the Taoiseach said, no, I would not consider what is happening now rare, and the numbers are too high. But by then, of course, it was too late, because the box had been opened and there's no putting it back. In the same way, when I spoke out during that referendum campaign, I was rebuked by people for daring to say that the legislation would allow abortions to take place for reasons that were comparatively trivial. And I was loudly lectured that this made me anti-women, and that no woman would ever have an abortion for any other than an absolutely compelling reason. And it was insulting to suggest otherwise. Well, I'm sorry, but I believe that to have an abortion in order to participate in what, when all is said and done, is a game, is a trivial reason. The fact that it's happening in so many other places really is such a concern, because I'm not just talking now on a national basis, but I'm talking about how in Western society in general, we have basically got our priorities so screwed up that we believe it is permissible to take human life in order to win a game. And that is a shocking indictment on all of us. It's something that we need to pray about, that if you, like me, you are a committed believer in Jesus Christ, this should be something that should be an urgent call to prayer. Not just for legislation or for the results of that referendum to be rolled back at some point in the future, but for us to say, how can we address our society in a way that will once again have proper priorities? How can we help our society to come to a place where the preservation of human life is considered a higher priority than playing a game? Because if we can't even get that sorted out, then we are in a sad state of affairs indeed. I'm sorry that this is such a sobering and a downbeat message, but I do believe that this is something that we need to see sorted in our society. And if we as the people of God cannot bring about a change in people's priorities, nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to have that concern for human life. So I would invite you to join me in making this a subject for earnest prayer, that we would once again return our society to a place not where people are just compelled to protect human life out of legislation, but to a point where we will truly value life and think it is something that's worth treasuring and protecting. Again, this may seem a downbeat message, but remember, it may be Friday, but Sunday's coming, and I believe as people of God we can build a better future for our nation in Jesus' name. God bless you.